Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Julie Mann. I am a professional network marketer and actor, and I'm also an EFT practitioner. And today I'm joined by Mike Sengelow. Hi, Mike.
Good morning, Julie.
So for those people that don't know, Mike is from Sketch House Comedy and he's also a communications facilitator. So before we start talking about the work that you do, Mike, how about you start by telling us what life was like when you were a small boy growing up?
Okay, well, that would be in New Zealand, a small town New Zealand. I've come a long way geographically and in many other ways as well. I grew up in a small town in New Zealand, a little place called Timaru in the middle of the South Island. So wonderful upbringing, great place to grow up, rivers and lakes and mountains and beaches and all of that ideal situation. So yeah, a wonderful childhood. And I think I got very early into amateur dramatics and there's, I suppose, not what people would normally associate with a childhood in New Zealand, but actually, I've learned in retrospect that the amateur dramatics scene in New Zealand, particularly where I grew up, though, is very strong. As Kiwis, love pantomimes and all those traditional sort of British stage shows, gang shows. I did even as a Boy Scout. So I cut my teeth on the stage at a very young age. And in fact, the theatre in Timaru, where I grew up, is a beautiful Victorian style 1,000-seater auditorium. And again, I took it for granted growing up. I did a lot of musicals and shows and plays on that stage. And having toured around the UK in various theatrical productions, I now appreciate that actually that stage that I learned all my stagecraft on is similar to many of the provincial and regional touring theatres in the UK.
How fabulous. So how old were you then when you moved from New Zealand?
So I was about 24. I moved over here after having a bit of a TV career in New Zealand. At quite a relatively young age, I got into a TV show in New Zealand, and that was a sketch comedy show. So I hadn't even finished university. I was successfully got into this sketch comedy show at the age of 20. Relatively young. I was certainly the youngest actor in the cast. That was a TV show called Skits in the mid-90s. Originally, it was called Schizo, but unfortunately, there was a complaint lodged by the Schizophrenic Society that wasn't acceptable. So we had to change it to just Skits. But yeah, sketch comedy in the 90s was like that, particularly in New Zealand. It was right on that brink of what can you get away with and what is acceptable. A lot of the stuff that we did then, certainly in that show, would not be accepted now. But for that very reason, I think it broke down a lot of boundaries, that sketch comedy show. It had a large proportion of its content was about Maori and Pacific Islanders, and because our cast had a proportion of it that were Maori and Pacific Islanders, and indeed the writers. So, relatively groundbreaking for a New Zealand comedy show. I'm sure if I was to watch the show back now, I might cringe at some of the sketches in it, but in their simplicity. But for the time, it was incorporating very rudimentary sort of computer graphics into it as standalone sketches. So it was doing some pretty weird and wonderful things. Now, for me as a young actor, I learned a lot very quickly about doing funny stuff in front of camera, how to film it all, how to write it all, how to develop and devise sketches. So that meant when I came over here, I already had what we did 7 series of that. There was 2 different spin-off shows from it. In New Zealand, it did very well, ran for a number of years. So I already had quite a bit of professional experience behind me. But I came over here to the bright lights and the big stars of London, and went straight into drama school and did a year at drama school, because I believe that was the quickest way for me to get into the industry, was to sacrifice a year of my life as I saw it. Of course, I didn't realize I still had so much more to learn. And in fact, that year at drama school was more than just a way into the industry over here for me.
Were you doing it because you just really enjoyed it, or did you actually think you were funny? Did you think you had some talent?
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? What you were told and what you believe I guess from a young age, I mean, I say young age, going back to those Amdram days, 10 or 11, I was on stage doing funny little plays. And as quite a small young boy, I was often being told, oh, you're so funny and cheeky and you come across, so cute and funny and all these things, as a young lad. So I think that, you get told that, you start believing it, and that's what you start playing to. You play to that type, and then you start getting cast in those roles, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, very much told from the start that I was a natural comedian. I think it was similar sort of play acting that I got from my father. He had a good sense of humor. It comes from his side of the family. He was English, so in fact I've got more uncles and aunties here in the UK than I have in New Zealand. So he was one of 11. So having now come over here and lived and met all these uncles and aunties on my Sengelow side that I'd never met when I was growing up, I've learned there is a particular Sengelow sense of humor that's clearly there genetically, although I was not surrounded with it whilst growing up in New Zealand, far away from the main family hub.
How brilliant. I love what you said about, the fact that you were told that you were funny and then you started believing it. I think that, the things that we hear, it has such an impact, doesn't it? And also the things we say about ourselves has such an impact, whether they're in our head or we actually say them out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with acting, particularly with performance. If you're told you're elegant on stage, then you will play elegance very well. If you're told you're a great singer, then you'll only do musicals. It makes you make those choices, those sort of compliments that you get paid at any point. I'll never forget one situation when I was working on telly, living in Wellington, and a woman came up to me on the street, tapped me on the shoulder, and I've never met her before. I turned around and said hello. She said, "I just want to tell you, you have a great face for what you do." And then she walked off. I don't know if my mum paid her to do that. I don't know, but it was a very strange incident, and I'll never forget it because it made me think, it's a very genuine compliment, but I don't know really what it meant, and it sat with me, and it made me think, maybe I do have a great face for what I do. It's a strange compliment, isn't it?
It is about your interpretation of it, isn't it?
Yeah. It could be wonderfully offensive too, but
absolutely. Yeah. There's some strange kind of background noise every so often, Mike. But anyway,
okay,
we'll carry on regardless, because that's what we do, isn't it?
Yes, we do. Keep calm, carry on.
Totally. So I know that you're all confident in NLP, transactional analysis. Some people might not know what that is. Customer service training, presenting, and people management skills. So as an actor, we all know that it's the norm to go through periods of not working, isn't it? So did you learn those skills so that you could get more work? How did that happen?
Yeah, okay. So, very soon realized after coming out of drama school, the harsh reality of how competitive it is here. Of course, I was a smaller fish in a bigger pond again, and needed to find a way to earn money. And so getting into this corporate acting where actors are used for training, that happened very quickly after I graduated. And I soon started to realize that that was a great way of earning better money than bar work, better money than being a waiter, better money than all those horrible other temp jobs that actors have to do in between gigs. And that I was fairly good at it, that I could facilitate a group, that I got my head around role play exercises and feeding back to people. And I started to genuinely enjoy the sort of science of it, if you will. And that's where things like, transactional analysis, NLP, all those sort of, I guess it's pseudo-psychology that comes into the training environment, that once you start as an actor, you soon become a facilitator, and all of a sudden you've got a room of people in front of you, and you need to put some substance behind the stuff that you're teaching them. So you learn that framework, but it's very applicable to the things that we use at drama school. The concept of transactional analysis, basically being parent, adult, and child, is similar to the status games and status concepts that we learn for stage between characters in terms of how we interact. So really it is actor training being put into a corporate framework so that people can swallow it a bit more. You know, they don't want the idea that, oh, I'm being taught by an actor to be an actor. I don't want to be an actor. But actually, we're all actors, aren't we? You know, and this is what people soon realize. I need to put on a certain persona and control my emotions in order to influence another person or come across in a certain way. Well, that's acting.
Yeah, and having those skills are transferable, aren't they? They're great in life. I mean, whether you're acting, whether you're working, you know, just living your life, having those skills is really enormously beneficial.
Definitely.
So
I mean,
yeah. Sorry, go on, Mike.
Well, I completely agree with that. You know, excuse me. I think I've caught your chesty cough virtually. I believe the idea that the way that people interact in social and professional terms can be broken down and analyzed, and is really interesting. That's what actors do. They're always people watching. They're always intrigued by how people behave in certain situations. Obviously, the more dramatic the situation, the more interesting it is. But sometimes in banal situations, it's just as fascinating. And that's what actors have, a curiosity about human behavior. And that, again, always transfers into the world of communications and influencing.
Totally. Human beings in general are curious, aren't they? Which is why they spend hours and hours on Facebook living vicariously through someone else's world.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, it's the equivalent of sitting in a cafe and watching people walk past, isn't it? But just on a computer.
Totally. So I know that you have a wife and family now, and obviously that requires a constant income, doesn't it?
Right on.
What have been the biggest challenges that you've ever had to face in your whole career?
I think it is making those decisions as an actor as you progress through your life, that you don't sacrifice a life for the obsession of being an actor. A lot of actors they get to a certain point in their life and they just think, I can't do this anymore, and they chuck it in. That tends to happen around, you know, sort of early 30s, when people want to start a family, male or female. A lot of people say an actor's profession, particularly in theatre, is a gay man's life. You know, they don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. It's just because it fits in with the notion that if you don't want to have a standard sort of heterosexual family situation, then you're free to go off touring theatre and taking jobs at the drop of a hat, and you don't have to be at home to raise the children or whatever. Now, of course, that notion is changing, and as the idea of a standard family situation changes as well. But I think for me, the difficult decisions I had to make when I met my now wife, who is an actor as well, and we said, how are we going to do this? You know, we want children together. We want a nice house together. We want to go on nice holidays. For 95% of actors in this country and around the world, that's a very hard thing to attain while still acting. Going into the corporate training area has certainly helped us do that. That provides our bread and butter. It pays the mortgage. It's allowed us to raise 2 children. And in amongst all of it, it has an element of flexibility where we still do theatre, tally, film, all these lovely little jobs that pop up at a very short notice often, and have the flexibility to do these wonderful little jobs and still be able to confidently call ourselves actors is a very difficult thing for a husband and wife in their 40s.
Yeah, and achievement as well. Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
I know about 4 years ago you set up Sketchhouse Comedy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Sketchhouse Comedy is a business idea that I've set up with another chap. He's a copywriter. I'm obviously an actor, but also a director now. And that we wanted to be able to provide comedy sketches for online content for businesses. It's the idea that businesses now need to market themselves online. They need video content to do that. Some of the most engaging content is funny. but you can only have so many funny little clips of a panda falling out of a tree. Sometimes you need a sketch that might be about or loosely about your brand or your product or your service. And we know that people share funny content. Where do you go to when you want a funny sketch made, whatever that the notion of a sketch might be? And we believe that, you know, there's a gap in the market for that, and that we can, basically, as we do, go to a client, say, you know, what are you about? Write a sketch that, as we say, is not explicitly about that thing, and then provide that content to them so that they can get it out there and get some viral sharing going on and get some brand awareness.
Brilliant, because we want to laugh, don't we?
Yeah, and even on, you know, formats such as LinkedIn or things like that, which tend to be rather dry, we're certainly starting to see a shift during the pandemic to, come on, let's lighten up a bit here. Business needs a laugh too, and that there is a way of demonstrating a good sense of humor and having a laugh about certain topics, certain brands, certain approaches, certain businesses, without losing an element of professionalism.
Brilliant. I mean, laughing, it feels good. It actually releases endorphins. I mean, it's healthy.
Yeah, it's a good thing all around. Absolutely, people get to share a laugh, you know, and sharing a laugh is very important. Of course, we know that we've been sharing funny things on, you know, via the internet for years now, but not necessarily around business as much.
It's such a great idea. So I know that you also record regular videos of the Fro Show. So
Yeah.
what's the story behind the Fro Show?
Okay, so Sketch House was born out of Fro Show. Fro Show is really the stage entity of my ongoing sort of connection and lifelong sort of obsession with the sketch comedy. So the Fro Show is a stage sketch comedy show. It began 5 years ago when I actually moved with my family out of London, down to the middle of Sussex, middle of nowhere, to a place called Forest Row. People that live in Forest Row call themselves Froers. So Forest Row is often referred to as the Fro, and hence the Fro Show. The show is ostensibly about Forest Row, but it could be anywhere. We use the village life, and it's a relatively unique village, as a lens for reflecting other topical sketches. So every year, at least, we do one production of the Fro Show, and we would put that on locally, and then we take it to other festivals. So we play at Brighton Festival, the Byline Festival. Now we've become the in-house comedy show there. Of course, 2021 notwithstanding, but it has developed a life of its own. We've developed a great team of actors and writers and production that make the shows. A lot of people that go into the development of it. Each show is completely unique and different, and we've really got a machine there now that can provide the sort of sketches we need to produce for Sketch House. So whenever a client comes along and says, I want to sketch loosely about this, we bring in our writers, bring in our actors, put a sketch together, everyone gets paid, everybody's happy, and we get to do a stage show too for fun.
Amazing. It's me. There's a feedback thing going on.
Oh, is it what, like an echo?
Yeah.
Oh.
Only when I start though talking, so interesting. Anyway,
Okay.
Hopefully people will carry on watching anyway.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have, Mike, for someone who might be thinking about embarking on a career as an actor or a writer or a producer? What would you say?
Oh, wow, where do I start? Okay. I think it does go back to my point that, remember, you've got to live as well. Paying the bills as an artist, as sort of unartistic as that sound, if that's a word, you've got to get by. You've got to have that situation around you that allows you to be creative. And you're working on a sinking ship if you don't have that set up. You've got to have in place, I think, a form of income or a certain stability that doesn't stress you out, so that you can be creative. Because, as you well know, I'm sure, to be creative you've got to have that freedom to express what you want to do. So I think for any creative, particularly actors, you've got to be quite entrepreneurial. And I believe that even at a drama school level, whatever sort of institution you go to for the training or teaching of your creative art, whether that's, the fine arts or music or drama, that it should essentially, part of that training should be like a business college. It should be teaching you how to make money out of your profession, because otherwise you're only going to last so long in this world. You can't get by on hands out of loaves of breads and the occasional bottle of wine. So I think it's important that artists learn that they are running a business.
Yeah.
And the end product of that business is their creative output, but everything that leads up to that and around that is a standard business like many other businesses. I think when you're young and ambitious, you just think, oh, I've just got to be an amazing performer. But it's not. That's one half of it. That's just the front part of the shop. There's everything behind that makes that product work.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I remember, because I went to college 98 to 80, so a long time ago. But I remember, I loved drama college and I was so excited to get out into the big wide world, but actually it was such a shock. And obviously things have changed dramatically now, and people are kind of realizing that they need more than one stream of income. But
yeah.
I totally agree, that would really make such a difference, because when people do have talent, it's such a shame when they give up on that. And and it can't just be about the ego, it has to be that practical. We have to have, like you say, that structure around you. Yeah. So what gives you the most joy?
Ooh, my 11-year-old son asked me that yesterday as part of his well-being exercise he was doing for homeschooling. And I think the answer I gave him is probably the true one. It's being on stage or in front of the camera and really performing in something that matters, because I enjoy that, and I enjoy the audience reaction to that, whether it's live and instant or in some way deferred reaction. That gives me a great sense of fulfillment. As a director and a producer now, then I'm creating those moments and perhaps handing over that ability to other people. But that can be just as satisfying when your vision of even a comedy sketch. I think a lot of people, I'm very proud of sketch comedy and its power. A lot of people dismiss sketch comedy as a bit frivolous and silly, medium for influence. And the Fro Show is very socio-political, dare I say it, in terms of the stuff that we talk about, and we reflect often the things that are difficult or the things that are controversial back to an audience. And good comedy should be controversial, and it should ask questions. And I believe this goes back to the notion of a court jester. The jester is there to amuse the king and the queen, but really he's mocking everyone. And that brings relief. That's where this idea of comic relief comes from. If we can laugh about our problems and the things that we disagree on, then we make for a happier society. And that gives me a greater sense of satisfaction, going back to your question. If I see that the thing that I'm creating or performing in is making people have that kind of response at a level where you go, I think you're contributing to our society here by this little show you're putting on, then that gives me a great sense of satisfaction. I'm using my craft to do that.
Wonderful. One last question, Mike, before we go. When you're no longer on this planet, How would you like to be remembered?
Oh, I think it probably goes back to what I was just saying. He made us laugh and he made us relax. Yeah. I'd like to have done my service in that way.
Fabulous. Mike Sengelow, thank you so very much.
Pleasure, Julie. Thank you.